Russia says its troops have begun storming the town of Vuhledar, a Ukrainian stronghold. Further north, the town of Ukrainsk was taken just in the last 24 hours. And they're moving in on the strategically important city of Pokrovsk. An evacuation order is issued there weeks ago, but around 15,000 of its 50,000 population have stayed put. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Pork O'Brien has been there. He joins me now live from Dnipro. Pork.
Matt, over the next 48 hours, President Zelenskyy will be meeting with Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, and he'll be doing the hard sell on his victory plan. It's likely to include things like an attempt to get a security guarantee from NATO countries. It's likely to include an attempt to finally get permission from the US to use long-range missiles deep inside Russia. The point of all of that is that Zelenskyy believes that he not necessarily can win this war, but that he can make sure Vladimir Putin does not. He believes that with the right sort of support from the West over a long enough period of time, he can force Putin to want to stop this war and thus end up at the negotiating table. Proving those sorts of wins has been very important, and Ukraine has had those wins recently. There is a problem, though. And the problem is in the east. As you said, Russian forces are moving in on around a variety of towns and villages in the east. We spent some time in one of these vital frontline towns, Pokrovsk. And I can tell you one thing, the soldiers that we spoke to there were not talking victory. On the approach to the frontline town of Pokrovsk, there's the fog of war. And then there's just the dust. The main entry road over the bridge has been blown out, so drivers focus on the dirt track ahead and filter out thoughts of Russian drones above. The last civilian evacuation train left here weeks ago, so the only thing oncoming, the Russians. A few miles away and moving ever closer. We stop briefly on the outskirts. So the damage is in pockets in Pokrovsk at the moment, but soldiers we're talking to say that they're expecting another Bakhmut coming. What they mean by that is fundamentally the leveling of this town. In the centre, the now mainly elderly residents who remain don't bat an eyelid when another shell lands or another breathless journalist jogs past. So it's very quiet in Pokrovsk at the moment. It's been a particularly heavy day of fighting. We've been told not to hang around too much in the centre. The soldier who's accompanying us, though, is bringing us to a water point. We think there may be some people there. Interestingly, the soldier that is with us 2 weeks ago, he was in a car that got hit by a Russian drone. His colleague was burned to death inside, and he survived. There's a lot of nervousness around Russian drones at the moment. That's part of the reason why the clock is ticking for us. People stay for all sorts of reasons. Hannah, who's 80, wants to see out twilight years at home, even if home is in artillery range. Why have you decided to stay?
А куда нам, пенсионерам? Ну куда нам? Ну я поеду, буду там на полу спать.
Other reasons to stay? If you're one of the Zheduni, the waiting ones. Part of the Russian-speaking population here content to wait for the arrival of Moscow's troops. Some people we spoke to feel abandoned by Kyiv here, a long-standing narrative in parts of the Donbass, now turbocharged as the front line comes to their backyard. And where Natalia grows her veg, a kilo of which costs just 40 pence. The rage at President Zelenskyy you get for free.
Мы никому не нужны, ни правительству, ни даже своему народу. Вот переведи ему, пожалуйста. Ну, я знаю, что ты профильтруешь сейчас и не переведешь ему. Плевать все хотели. Киев плевать на нас хотел. Западная Украина плевать на нас хотела. В любом городе плевать на нас хотели.
Zelenskyy comes to the UN General Assembly in New York this week with his victory plan, designed to try to lock in long-term commitment from Western partners. He knows that Ukraine fatigue is one of Putin's most potent long-range weapons. Olga's formative years were in Soviet times. Wants peace talks at any price.
President Zelenskyy has a victory plan. What does victory or what does an end to this look like for you?
Жалко дуже молодих хлопців, їх же ж усіх там викосять і все. Так що, а тільки перемовини, тільки договоритися. От ми ж з вами, якщо будемо ругатися, тільки можна мирно все врегулювати.
The idea that the rest of Ukraine doesn't care for the Donbass rings hollow at this secret location in Pokrovsk. Young soldiers from all over the country in a drone reconnaissance unit. It has frat house vibes, but replaced parties and PlayStation with a live feed of the Russian assault on the town.
Може бути гроші, може, не знаю. За що вони воюють, я не розумію.
Like hundreds over the course of the day in small groups of 5 or 10 just being thrown at the front.
Постійно. От, бачите, наприклад, отут посадка вже повністю гола. Бо, постійно, приходиться їх вбивати.
This is the meat grinder and it's working. Along this front, Russians are slowly surrounding several towns, places like Volodar to the south of Pokrovsk. Privately, other Ukrainian soldiers we've spoken to have blamed the redeployment of troops to the Kursk offensive in Russia for the weakening of their positions on this front. Andrei and Serhiy are newbies. The young volunteers became friends during their 35 days of training a few weeks ago. They're just about to be deployed to a frontline position. What goes through your mind when you're thinking about that in 2 days from now?
Excitement.
Excitement.
Calm.
I feel calm. I think in 1 hour formation will be some scared, but now calm.
Yeah. And again, to the question of how this ends. Could conceding occupied territory to Russia ever be part of the deal for these men?
I think no. So many guys died. So, which negotiation? Negotiation if we took back our old territory. These guys died for these territories.
So for you, there's too much Ukrainian blood in that soil.
Yeah.
So that's non-negotiable, that territory.
Yep. From my opinion, yes.
Ситуация нестабильная.
Our last stop is compliments of an evacuation volunteer, Vladislav, nickname Hedgehog. He's driving us into the mining districts around Pokrovsk. One of the mines was hit the day after we were there. 2 people died.
Вот такой кот жирный лежит.
Hedgehog is evacuating Olga.
На эвакуацию кто-то из вас?
Я буду ехать.
Ну тогда собираемся, что нужно
Всё, Ну,
делать?
я 2 сумки сейчас.
Ну давайте я вам помогу.
Пошлите. Света, можно еще 2 пакета? Один.
Her husband, like so many in the villages, did time in the army, then went on to work in the pits. He died 2 years ago. What do you think was your happiest memory in this place?
Ну, когда мы с мужем тут начали жить. Изначально вот как-то так. Первые дни как-то непривычно сначала было, ну.
With the shelling getting closer, Olga's decided to pack up for Kyiv and relatives there.
Хорошо. Стреляет какой-то гад, да?
Ага, так круглосуточно стреляют.
On the way out, we're startled by camouflaged goodbyes.
Спасибо. Ну туда, на Киев, до Оли еду.
Ludmilla and her husband Valery's farewell to their neighbour.
Да.
Madam, what's going through your mind?
Не знаю, страдаю страшно, я переживаю. Я боюсь, що в'їду на народі не умру. Мені 73 роки, за що? Я так страдаю.
They're holding on here for now. Another mining family with veins of pain close to the surface.
Who do you blame for the situation that you're in?
Путін. Путін винен. І путінська ота шайка. Извиняйте, що я так кажу. Мені кажеться, нельзя так делать, но я вот это їхню верхівку всю проклинаю до кісточок.
The day after Olga left, at around the same time, this village was hit. An elderly woman survived under the rubble of her home. They call them cauldrons, where armies start surrounding places. In and around Pokrovsk, for people like Ludmila and Valery, the water is starting to boil.
Now, if you're having trouble reading the subtitles, there'll be a dubbed version of Pokrovsk report later on our website at channel4.com/news. And let me just show you President Macron. I don't know if you can see him in the gaggle there. President Macron has just come out of the building. He is talking to, I don't know who it is. Anyway, he's having a chat with a couple of journalists and other delegations. He, of course, has been leading some of the negotiations behind closed doors for peace, or something approaching peace in Lebanon. Let's just see if he's coming around here. President Macron, what chance for peace in Lebanon? He's pretending not to hear me. Outrageous. Anyway, okay. Well, I think we'll leave him. Is there anything more? No, he's rather enjoying the attention. We'll leave him to it. Anyway, well, one country with a very keen interest in what's happening in Ukraine is Latvia, which also borders Russia, of course. I caught up with the country's president, Edgar Zarinkevich, earlier and asked him about Mr. Zelensky's assertion that he would force the Russians to accept his victory plan.
The fact that Ukraine is already fighting for almost 3 years, it shows that all those assumptions that Ukraine is going to lose, that Ukraine is not capable to fight, they are gone. And I think that indeed it is possible for Ukraine to use both diplomacy and also military force to get as good bargaining position as possible when the real political process starts.
We have an American election in less than 2 months' time, and President Zelensky hasn't even been given a meeting with Donald Trump, who's the other candidate in this election. And we know that Donald Trump is not in favor of continuing with the kind of aid that we've had so far, military or financial.
Yes, American elections are going to be very important. However, I think that, like it or not, but still that war is decided in Ukraine by Ukrainians, and indeed it would be a pity if the support they need would be somehow decreased or stopped.
Are you worried that if Trump becomes president, it's not even a question of whether there's going to be more aid for Ukraine, but that actually NATO itself might cease to exist as we know it?
You know, we have a lot of doomsday scenarios. We used to have this kind of discussion back in 2016, 2017, and so on. My country spends around 3% on defense, and we are going to continue this trend.
What is the right balance between helping Ukraine win this war and not triggering a wider war against Russia itself?
No, we know a bit Russia, and we know that normally when they are talking about escalation and instigating some fear, they have some weaknesses. So from that point of view, I don't see there is a serious risk of further escalation.
NATO is planning, in the eventuality of a conflict with Russia, how to evacuate wounded NATO soldiers from the front line, from countries like yours. And I just wonder whether you in Latvia think that a direct confrontation with Russia, is something that has now become more probable.
Look, NATO is a defensive alliance. It should be planning for everything. I think that the better prepared we are, the less likelihood for some kind of direct military confrontation. Frankly, I don't believe that Russia is going to invade any of NATO member states in observable future. What we are seeing today, and we should be paying attention, is all kinds of hybrid attacks, cyber warfare, subversive activities, disinformation campaigns.
So not a traditional land invasion, it would be something
absolutely
more complicated, more subtle.
Look what is happening with Finland or with Latvia, Poland or Lithuania. Russia is now using migration as the hybrid weapon against Finland. Belarus, the proxy of Russia, does the same with us. So from that point of view, where I see immediate danger is this kind of hybrid warfare, which is already ongoing, Here we should be better prepared for all kinds
But can you ever live
contingencies.
in peace next to President Putin as long as he's in power? Whatever deal might be made at the end of this conflict in Ukraine.
I'm sorry, but we have history. NATO was created back in 1949 when Stalin was ruling the Soviet Union. And NATO was able to provide peace. We need to forget this kind of attitude we have developed since 1990s. Let's look for some kind of political deal. Let's look for some kind of trade-offs. I don't believe that at this point, if we show the weakness, if we talk political stuff and we don't show the strengths, that it would be very helpful. But yes, I do believe that it is possible for NATO not to engage in war if NATO shows strengths.
President Rinkiewicz, thank you very much indeed.